It's called the ZenFone 6. I know nothing about it, to be honest. I mean,
yeah, the specs are there.
He just showed up with it. He said it's interesting and exciting, and it's a bit different. Something that it does is a bit different, so I'm kind of pumped to check it out, in fact. All right, so interesting phone here today. ZenFone 6. Got my hands on it. It's apparently pretty interesting, a little bit different. Has a feature that I feel like I saw before a really long time ago. A feature that I think some people might be a fan of. It's got a Snapdragon 855, 8 gigs of RAM. Is this a case or a... Oh, it is, okay. Basic kind of case. This is the device, so you can start to see some of the specs here. As I mentioned, Snapdragon 855, latest flagship from Qualcomm. It's got a 6.4-inch all-screen. A lot of people using that terminology these days. Nano Edge display with Corning Gorilla Glass 6, so it should be pretty durable. You see a little diamond there. And the flip camera, which is the interesting part of this particular device. Front and rear, 48 megapixel Sony IMX586, and then a 13 megapixel ultra wide. Now, why would I want some crazy flippy camera? There it is, by the way. Woo! That's cool. And of course, the reason is because you get your best camera to always be your camera. Your best camera is always on the rear side of your device for obvious reasons. Now, on this one, I guess that's not the case. Somehow this thing is gonna flip around, and you're gonna get access to a dual lens setup. You have your basic big sensor lens, and then you've also got your wide angle. You're gonna get that wide field of view that I'm such a fan of, and also actually happens to be quite useful on a front-facing camera, so when the thing flips around, you can imagine that one being the popular choice. There's still a fingerprint scanner in the rear. You know what? That's not such a problem for me. I like these fingerprint scanners. I find them fast and reliable. USB Type-C down on the bottom here, and also a headphone jack. There's also a textured, what is this? Some sort of a shortcut button, I'm guessing. Will's telling me this button, it can trigger Google Assistant, so it's an assistant style button. Oh, or you can customize it to do something else. So that's kind of nice. A nice little switch, and it doesn't have a texture. It has a tiny little texture to it. Now, I should also mention, while I'm showcasing the outside of this device, it's got a huge battery in it. That's another differentiating factor. And they really have a couple of differentiating factors in this phone. We've got Type-C cable. There's a semi-decent, pretty decent looking headset included as well. Interchangeable ear tips to go with that headset, and then a quick charge power brick here. Let's boot this up, see if it has any power here. Oh, it definitely does. Okay, cool. Yes, it's an all-screen design. There's a bit of a bezel around the sides and a chin as well, but no notch. So the display is IPS, and it's 6.4 inches FHD+. So another cool thing about this device is it's expandable. It's actually got a triple slot. Look at the size of this SIM card tray. It's got a triple slot setup. So you can have 2 SIM cards, 2 nano SIMs, and a micro SD card up to 2 terabytes. Of course, who's buying 2 terabyte SDs, micro SDs? But that said, on the earlier episode of Lou Later, downstairs, we showcased the 1 terabyte micro SD card. So that is a thing you can get right now. So if you're a big fan of local storage, not necessarily storing things in the cloud, you can put a large micro SD card in here, expand your storage from the available 256 gigs that comes on the phone. All right, so this is pretty cool. This is the smart key that I was mentioning earlier, which can wake up Google Assistant, and it actually is multifunctional. One press will call up Google Assistant. Press twice, it calls up Google Assistant and then runs your personal updates. Press and hold and keep talking to Google Assistant, and then when you release, Assistant will respond immediately. That's kind of cool. You can also customize the smart key function to fit your personal need. All right, I like that. This is set up. Let's get the brightness cranked up. Okay, so obviously not an OLED display. It's not all bad. It does one thing. It helps to bring the cost of this thing into, you know, kind of an attractive range. Retail price, $499. Kind of diving into the territory that OnePlus just left. Honestly, I'm having OnePlus vibes just on the home screen here. The bezel is a bit bigger here than on the OnePlus device, around the edges. But not so much so that it's going to be offensive. It looks like the experience here is pretty stock. Very stock, in fact. They're calling it Zen UI, but it's a very similar experience to stock Android. Okay, now I'm not even going to try to snap a rear camera yet because I'm just too curious. I got to hit this button. Here we go. Oh, it flips out. it flips up. Did you witness this, Jack? Why has no one thought of that? Look at this. Ready? It looks to me like we are fully in the era of motors on smartphones. 2019 is the motor year for smartphones. That is crazy. Why? I mean, you've got this amazing camera on the back of the device. Why not utilize it twice? Now, of course, it's not all rosy. This means you've got this mechanism in place. That motor, you're going to have to trust it. I'm going to switch between the portrait, the kind of typical focal length, and wide. So this switches over to the wide angle. A 48 megapixel Sony IMX586 flagship sensor, and then the secondary camera is a 13 megapixel 125 ultra wide, 125 degree field of view ultra wide. It's got some sort of an HDR process going on right away. I'm definitely beautified. I got to toggle that back. Jack, that's not me. What is this? Am I not beautiful enough to you already? So without HDR on, you can immediately pick up a little more contrast in the old beard there. That's the wide one to give you an idea of focal range. And then we have the slightly closer one. It's a nice selfie. It's a good selfie. I still feel like in the skin tones, it's a bit softer, a little more forgiving. Yeah, it's pretty impressive, man. I mean, if you're into taking pictures of yourself, I mean, you're just getting way more resolution than you would typically get on a selfie image. Ooh, I feel like portrait mode has done even better. And now the beard is even more distinguishable. Of course, it's also capable 4K video. You're out like this, and you got the full resolution. Yeah, Kirk's right. So another advantage here. You now have a flash on the front of your device. And that's the wide aspect ratio right there. And then slightly more zoomed in on the standard focal range. Lots of resolution, very vibrant. Of course, I've got to evaluate the speakers. First, let's check out some dialogue on Unbox Therapy here. Oh, wow. Okay, so they've included something called Audio Wizard, including DTS surround sound. It's currently in normal mode with volume maxed. So let's head back to the video here. With Beats products, pretty much all of them, the expectation is... Okay, my usual test here where I check to see exactly where the sound is coming from. A vast majority is out of the bottom of the unit. Benefit there is going to give you a little bit more detail coming straight at you, but all your low end, most of your frequency range is going to come out of the bottom, and you can block that, unfortunately. It is possible. A bit bigger than AirPods. It's way bigger. It's like... Let's say I go to vocal on the DTS. Ear, like this. And you have interchangeable
it really works
as well.
That's a pretty cool feature built in.
Standard for athletic style earphones.
See, that's one of my problems with a lot of these devices is that, like, out of the box, they can be muffled in exchange for some extending the bass piece of your sound profile. This one gives you the option to select. I'm curious when I play some music, so let's go ahead and do that. Wow. Okay, now keep in mind, it's currently, this is loud. Okay, so it's currently in voice enhanced mode. Oh, I don't know, let's try pop mode. It really changes the performance of it. I'm just gonna play it on the iPhone here just for a comparison. That's in pop mode. I'm putting in flagship territory. That's the iPhone. It's a $1,000 phone. I think you could argue this one might sound better. I have to say at $499, I'm impressed regardless. That's the way I'm going to put it. It's up to your... There's going to be a subjective choice there. I'd say I was a bit concerned at first. It felt a bit muffled before I went into the Audio Wizard that's installed by default when you hit the settings on the volume meter. Again, is this something you could achieve on a lot of smartphones if you installed some sort of third-party equalizer? Maybe. But they've done it right out of the box, and some of their presets sound great. So at $499, I'm pretty impressed with that package right there, sound-wise. This device is not OLED, so to give you a breakdown of how that kind of might affect you, there's a quick one, too. This is going to show you. I mean, I don't even need to click on a picture to show you what you're giving up when you go away from OLED. You might get slightly better battery consumption out of the LCD. Apple tried to convince you of this with the iPhone XR. I think the main thing here is you're getting a lower price point. Just way more contrast over here, especially when you see the white. Now, if I click on an actual pizza here, I mean, this is still like a pretty nice display from a detail perspective. It's just not gonna pop like this one, like the red over here. It's not a bad looking display. It's just let's not pretend that it's OLED, because it isn't. All right, so what can I say about this device? I think it's kind of promising at this price. I mean, I'm constantly bringing up price because that's really what it comes down to. Of course, if you had unlimited money, you know, why are you picking this phone over some other one unless you're just really attracted to the motorized camera component? Maybe you're like a professional Snapchatter or a Instagram user or something, then this is really the only way to get 48 megapixels, big size sensor facing you with a monitor to view it. And the Snapdragon 855, that's the chip that you want, right? That's the horsepower you're looking for. And it's becoming a little bit more difficult to find that chip at an accessible price, especially when it's paired with a half-decent camera and a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. So I think it's a pretty competitive price point at $499. I think the big question here is gonna be if you just absolutely wanna have OLED. But if you're like, hey man, I only really care about the OLED thing when I see them side by side, then that just exposes the fact that they look different. And you might be right. In this environment, this display looks good to me, and I'm counting my extra dollars saved while I'm flipping around my fancy camera. So there's a case to be made for it. And then the other angle is the giant battery. 5,000 milliamp hour battery, that's no joke. I think on this hardware, that's gonna give you some serious battery life. You're definitely gonna be charging this less than a lot of other competitors at this price point and other price points for that matter. And of course, how could I forget? No notch as a consequence. You're just looking at all displays. So when you pop open that YouTube video, it's no distraction. And I think that's worth something. I think that's actually a pretty valuable thing, and it's increasingly the case. We now have more options. Notchless options are a real thing in 2019, and that's a good thing. But there's also gonna be those of you that are apprehensive in the no motor camp. You're the same people that were commenting in the OnePlus 7 Pro video saying, that's just not for me. I'm not ready for a motor in my smartphone. And that's a valid point as well. Now, I'm sure in this case, the testing has been done as well, just like 300,000 times on the OnePlus side. But you just can't change the fact that it's a moving component, and there's a motor in your smartphone. And up until now, that just wasn't even a thing. Now you have options for which phone you want and which motor. This one has a cool factor. Can't take that away. You're probably using some boring slab right now. That's a party trick. You pull that baby out for the group selfie, and people are like, this man is onto something. You're doing something I'm not. So we got to add a little value there as well. I think it's an interesting package, and I think it probably deserves some attention. It's the ZenFone 6 with maybe the coolest, craziest camera contraption I've seen, definitely, in a long time.